I see you shiver with anticipation.
So, on a cold November night in Leeds,
Bonfire night, no less.
something completely expected happened to us. And we went to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It was a good evening spent.
It was.
It was. It wasn't too different from many of my other Saturday nights either, but it was of higher caliber campness, I'd say.
Elaborate. Why isn't it dissimilar to your other Saturday night?
Well, as we went for cocktails after the performance, we wandered past one of my haunts, and if you looked through the frosted windows, you may have seen a few drag acts on, but that's neither here nor there, unless that brings us back to our opinions on the show. Talking about drag, what did you think about Mr. Frank-N-Furter?
Obviously, if we haven't mentioned already, we're talking about the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I don't know if we have mentioned that already, actually.
Yeah, he's a character from, and
he's the character.
When we're saying something entirely expected happened, the expected is that it wasn't as good as Tim Curry's Frankenfurter. And Liam Tamney, the man who played and starred as Frankenfurter in the stage show that we went to see, he was a watered down Frankenfurter.
He came across, sadly, I couldn't get by in my mind the idea that he'd come up through the ranks of ITV talent shows.
BBC, it was The Voice.
But still, to me, the
Still a talent
BBC,
show.
yeah, they've kind of, I don't know, lowered themselves, but
That's for another discussion.
yeah. I was coming in prejudiced anyway, but he certainly didn't bring across this sort of character that brought hundreds of thousands of cult-like followers because of the complexity and perversity that the character actually represented.
Other people in the audience did enjoy it, though. They seemed to enjoy the highly sexualised Frankenfurter that Liam Tamney and the Leeds production put across.
And this isn't that we're saying that Tim Curry's Frankenfurter isn't highly sexualised.
It was more subtle. It was less kind of childish banter.
So the sexuality we're talking of is of types. So his was more that of cock jokes.
Yes. If you said penis in front of a Year 7 class, they would all laugh. And so did all the audience, apart from me.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that and less of the more subtle sexualization that Tim Curry gave across, where it was more dark, more villainous, something deeper, I would argue.
I'd agree.
Yeah, it was the way that he delivered the lines often as well. He rushed through a lot of the key lines of Frankenfurter.
So to me, it was the Fred show, Brad.
Yeah, in the bed, that was definitely one. Why did you think I should?
Yeah.
We'll be away from here in the morning.
Oh, Fred, you're so strong and protective.
You! I'm afraid so, Brad. But isn't it nice? Why, you? What have you done with Janet? Nothing. Why do you think I should?
He replaced that with physical humour.
Yeah.
He did this flappy thing with the pillow twice. Obviously, once with Brad, once with Janet, or vice versa. Vice versa? Or, sorry. And that kind of replaced the need for what actually a lot of the comedy in Rocky Horror Picture Show to me was coming from. Comedy's comedy, it's great. You shouldn't analyse it so much that you're losing the fact that things are just funny. But so much of why I think the original Rocky Horror Picture Show was hilarious was because it was poking fun at quite a stuffy kind of world Whereas this didn't stay true to its roots in poking fun at things which were stuffy. It kind of just, in fact, if it was indulging in X Factor-esque kind of silliness, to me, actually, that's just using the Rocky Horror Picture Show format to actually embrace quite a stuffy cultural kind of structure that we've got at the moment. So I don't know if I'm being too conspiratorial, but to me, it's almost as though you can reverse the use, and it's almost as though the enemies of the original Rocky Horror Picture Show have now, well, maybe they've not taken it over, but I don't think it's quite so stark that the Rocky Horror Picture Show actually stands for anything when it's like that.
No. He was there for the cheap laughs, almost.
Yeah.
The obvious laughs. And I think
it was really fun. Let's not get this wrong.
No, it was really fun, and anyone thinking of going or thinking of going again should definitely go, because I'm sure that it's different with each. Well, it definitely is different with each actor that plays Frankenfurter. My issue is that Frankenfurter should be a key element of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. He is the main character, and so when he just wasn't played as well as or as close to how Tim Curry played it, it lost something. And so then the other actors and the narrator.
Do you want to say a bit about
through.
what you mean by played as close to Tim Curry? Because people would jump on you then. I could jump down and say, well, like, nobody can be...
you shouldn't. Well,
yeah, because you're not him. So
yeah.
What do you mean?
I think there's some key elements of the character Frankenfurter that should always be there and was purposely written into the show, like with the more subtle readings of the lines of Frankenfurter, like "Why do you think I should?" and it's not all bad. He rushed through them, and those were kind of key lines of Frankenfurter that gave him that sultry character.
Sultry is a good word. He lingers. It's in his line, shiver with anticipation. Well, it summed it up, the fact that this guy did not even make them anticipate his anticipation. He sang it. He just went, anticipation, so he could sing it. And to me, that sums it up a little bit. Not that I like things being summed up in any way. I think the fact that everything was rushed through as though he just wanted to get to chuck the foreplay out and just get straight to the bang, that kind of sums it up, because Frankenfurter really, to me, should be sultry, should be enjoying teasing people, because it's that psychological pleasure in sex. Definitely. And what that means, because if you're just getting to pure physical sex, sex can't be used then as a tool to make a point in society. Whereas to me, the beauty of the Rocky Horror Picture Show is it used it as a tool to say, you know, we're not like you normal stuffy 1950s, even to a degree 1960s sort of tribe-minded sort of people. We're different and we don't fit. And you know how we're going to show you this? We're going to go right to something that is very sort of controversial for you, which is sexuality. And we're just going to explode it in your faces, because we know that you can't deal with that. But we know deep down, you claim to be so good and clean living and everything's so perfect in your little white picket fence, you know, the thing that they start the whole show off with. But actually, deep down, you fit just as poorly as we do, and it's actually shown in the fact that you're just as sexually depraved as any of us. So to me, that's what I know you don't want to make it too serious, because it is a good lot of fun.
It is.
But to me, you can't have a good lot of fun until you've kind of swept away stuffiness and people oppressing you. And to me, that's what the Rocky Horror Picture Show can do. It can have so much fun in its humanity, in just being silly, because it's also not following any rules. Whereas, can you imagine people actually genuinely laughing on the X Factor? Do people genuinely laugh on that show? I don't think they have proper humour, because I don't think they're actually allowed to be human enough to actually find things properly funny. Controversial.
Well,
Another show.
I've never laughed.
No.
And obviously it is heavily scripted and heavily performed on that show. But going back to Frankenfurter and making some comparisons between Liam Tamney, who played in Leeds, on a bonfire night in 2016.
I'm trying to get in like a rainy night quotation from the show, but I can't remember what the narration says.
I can't remember either, but obviously when they go
That's
and walk up,
that's what we're trying to do. Just
yeah, and if we want to make a point of comparison between a few different stage show and different Frankenfurters who have played Frankenfurter, disregarding Tim Curry for now, because obviously we know that he is the gold standard. If we refer to a YouTube video that's accessible, it's a cinema screening, 2-hour production, and it's on there for free. I think at the permission of Richard O'Brien and his production company, because he had this. Because he had this cinema screening done in support of Amnesty. And who played Frankenfurter was a man called David Bedella, and he was far closer to Tim Curry. He held his words longer. He waited until the perfect time to say his lines. He didn't Disneyfy, and when I say Disneyfy, you make it very Disney-like. He didn't Disneyfy "Don't Dream It, Be It."
Don't dream it. Be it. Don't dream it. Be it.
And Liam Tamney, he made it into a ballad.
it was a bit sickly sweet, and so
Because-
much of the focus was on the singing. I mean, Tim Curry, he could sing, but it wasn't that he was trying to be a great technical singer.
And this is what Richard O'Brien said in an interview on the same YouTube video with Aid Edmondson. He was asked why the songs were so successful, and he said that it was because it wasn't like a typical Broadway musical. These numbers, they were far more just almost improvised and sang by those that didn't have a lot of singing credentials. Not sure if you knew, but I didn't know that it started off as a stage show and then was adapted into a film.
I think I did know that somewhere in the back of my mind.
But Tim Curry did play
It's like a
Frankenfurter
sort
in
of
the original.
folk music. Maybe not, but to me it's like a folk music for aliens or the sci-fi folk music.
Aliens from Transylvania.
Yeah. I don't know, there's something, this idea that the music doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, it's
Pretty
not
damn good.
Yeah, but in the sense that it works around people's more natural rhythms, and
It wasn't about how they sang it. It was the words, the characters.
yeah, exactly.
How it was
and that's
sung.
what I mean by folk music. Like, folk is to do with storytelling of actual people. Now, these aren't actual people. These are kind of the weird aspects of people. So that's what I mean. It's like a sci-fi folk.
I noticed I just said it's not how you sang it, it's how you sang it. And by that I mean that, you know, it's not how many levels.
Very Stephen Fry just then.
It's not how many levels you can get. It's how you come across whilst you're performing it. And I'm sure they do it in X Factor. Obviously, the novelty acts, that it's not how they sing it, it's how they perform it. And I think the same can be said for Tim Curry. He's not an amazing singer, but the way he performed it. I think if you wrote down what Frankenfurter should be without Tim Curry's influence, and then Tim Curry looking at that and saying, okay, I've got this, it would still be perfect. He still did it so very well. And David Bedella in the YouTube screening also did it very well. There were points where he wasn't equal to Tim Curry, but nor should we really compare them too strongly, because
for one, it's a movie.
Yeah, and I think you should have some freedom to play Frankenfurter in the way that you want. The issue with the one that we went to see was that he took that and changed everything, so it kind of just didn't feel like Frankenfurter at all. And going back to the Don't Dream It, Be It, with the Liam Tamney one in Leeds, he did belt out this big ballad and very well sang.
He was a good singer.
Very good singer. But what David Bedella did was he whispered it more. He held his lines more. You know, he held on every word just that little bit better. And then, if we want to make another comparison, let's go to the recent TV film screening that happened in October with Laverne Cox, who played in
Just seen this myself.
in Orange Is the New Black. I haven't actually seen the whole film, but I would definitely give it a try.
Oh God, no! I don't want to. you thinking I've seen the whole? Just seen the clip.
Yeah, you've seen the Sweet Transvestite, and I think when you watch Sweet Transvestite, you get a good idea of whether this actor or actress, in Laverne Cox's case.
Well, in Rocky Horror Picture Show, we're not too fussed.
No, I think, and that's great. And with Laverne Cox, I think she did it very well. I think they, again, did try to make it a little bit more Disneyfied. The setting that they were placed in the TV film, it wasn't like an old mansion or a manor.
It looked a bit like the Glee performance.
Yes,
to me.
it did. I think that didn't translate very well to me.
Once again, for me, like, Rocky Horror is countercultural. It's the hiding place of a rundown sci-fi castle for the outcast, for the B movie, for the person who needs a bit of not just escape, but a little bit of a fight back against constantly being told that no, that's not how we do it. I think if you take that out of it, then you are robbing its original purpose.
And I'm sure some people would argue that with it being so countercultural, you're free to experiment it to the nth degree. You can change everything. But I would disagree with that, because you can't change everything, because then it's not the same. It doesn't reflect the character as well as they should when you take everything and change it completely. But Laverne Cox, she was very good. And I think if you put her in a better physical setting with a manner a little bit more dark, she would be able to.
I think she'd pull
it off very well. And I think that says a lot, that a character such as Frankenfurter can be played by both men and women of different races.
And that's what we've seen, like, well. Yeah, certainly. That was my kind of worry at first. I was thinking, or my big quandary was, how much is this connected to Tim Curry and his channeling of this, upper middle class sort of public schoolboy Englishman, which he can't shed completely and feeds into Frankenfurter lovely. I love that. But I was thinking, well, how well is it going to be pulled off when it's transformed? Not in the sense that nobody else could play it, but you having somehow pay homage to that way of expressing yourself. Almost as though the quirky is reserved for the strange Englishman, which isn't true. But I was just wondering that maybe when people come to the quirky in Western culture still at the moment, they have to somehow inhabit that mode of the quirky, I'm going to say the quirky white sort of Englishman or some Northern European, something. It's almost as though the white guy's got that premium on being weird, and then if you want to be weird, and I'm not saying that's right, and it's kind of sad actually, but if you want to be weird, then you have to come to the ways of expressing yourself that has been established by, say, like Strange Englishmen or I don't know, Germans or that sort of thing.
But if we go back to Liam Tamney for a second, we won't lambast him too much. He was still very good at some areas of it. I don't want to say that, he's awful, so you shouldn't go, because he wasn't awful. Very good singer. There were points where it was more Frankenfurter-esque, but again, it relied too much on the physical comedy that wasn't really in.
It was no doubt
Picture Show.
Quality, and
it was very good, and the stage production really good as well. You should definitely go see it, even if it's just to be a troll like the audience were. The audience was such a troll. I didn't expect it to be so much, and
I did a little from what we experienced in Universal Studio.
But
that was very American. Rocky was muscular,
of course. Yeah, I think they always can cast Rocky pretty well.
He had a bit of quirkiness. But, some
one?
Rockies I've seen, like, seemingly they've just kind of picked them out of a gym. But this guy seemed like he might have been picked out of a ballet or a stage school, and he was just really buff.
Leeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. He did Rocky very well. Yeah.
I could talk musicals with that guy, I think.
if we want to compare all the different characters in the one that we saw in Leeds, I think Frankenfurter fell down whilst everyone else kind of shone. The narrator, Charlie Condu from Coronation Street, very good. He he was able to react to the audience very well, but also remember his lines.
Is that
He'd only been
then
doing
again,
it
he's
for a
not
few
had
weeks.
as much
but
practice.
he was good.
You'd enjoy it, though. I mean, you'd really sort of what a rush. Oh, what a rush.
I think next time we go, because we definitely will go again.
Yeah.
We'll definitely get
With
more
a
involved
bigger group,
with the audience.
and we kind of need to be in better seats. There was
Yeah.
a massive pole in front of my face.
But the audience, they were a character on their own.
Yes.
And
A very Yorkshire. It was good. What
Yeah.
was that very Yorkshire response
I
that we
liked
got?
the one that was it was something to do with the original, and he was like, "That's Coca-Cola."
Oh yeah.
Remember?
I'm
Yeah.
the original. Yeah.
Yeah,
Not Coca-Cola. Yeah. And who actually calls it the full Coca-Cola? Only Yorkshire people. And it's just so they can show off their O's. Cola.
there were some really good ones. There was one guy in the front, like
Yeah.
cock.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, like, because I've just said how Yorkshire the audience was, and then I was considering, like, there were a lot of Southern voice as well. I guess it just attracts people from all
Yeah,
around.
I really did like the audience though, and the way that they trolled and almost tried to ruin the stage production in a way, and put a spanner in the works.
Which is great, because to me, clearly that was one of the original ideas. I've not read this up, but I should imagine if we're talking countercultural, it's
Well,
probably one of the original ideas of the stage show.
I did some research
Oh.
because I am very interested in how language becomes a thing and how we use language to our advantage, to our disadvantage. What it actually was, how it apparently came about, was following the film. Not to do with the original stage
Right,
production.
okay.
And it's very interesting
But
because this
yeah.
doesn't happen in any other stage show that I can think of. You don't get heckles. You don't get people trying to deliberately spoil the show.
No,
in
because
a
someone
way.
would turn around snarkily and be like,
Exactly. So what happened was, with the midnight showings of Rocky Horror, it didn't do so well in its first few weeks, Rocky Horror, and then they changed it to a midnight showing, a midnight film, so it would only be shown at midnight, and it got the cult following from that, so a lot of people kept coming and watching it almost every week. It was a ritual for them. Very interesting in its own right. I haven't done as much research into the midnight showings and why people wanted to go every week even though they've seen it. But what happened was, because people had seen it so many times, they started to be able to react to the film. And the first heckle is said to have come, I believe, somewhere in California or in the United States anyway.
well, probably California.
It might have been New York. It was either California or New York.
I've been to San Francisco.
There were some followings in some key hubs of Rocky Horror. One in New York, one in California, and I think somewhere else. And what happened was, there was a woman. She was said to be a teacher that was quite quiet. She'd never really shouted much. And what happened was she heckled the film. And it was right at the start of the film when Janet has the book over her head, and she said something like, "Get an umbrella, you bitch," or something like that. And it spanned off from there.
That's brilliant.
And that was apparently the first instance of a heckle in the film, and then that's what led to everyone.
See, that's quite troubling for me as a thinker, because I want to always find reasons, like deep structural reasons why things are as they are. But that kind of just makes it seem like,
Came out of nowhere.
I mean, it was fertile ground for it, though.
That's it, and that's what I'm really interested in, is that sort of fertile ground and how it influenced the language use. Because, as I say, it's very unprecedented that you get an audience heckling in the whole of a stage show.
But now
And
it
they do
seems as though
constantly.
it wouldn't work with it. Like, you think it wouldn't be the same show without it.
Yeah.
How could you sustain that sort of show without the audience? I mean, you're teasing constantly. I mean, in the movie, there's so much, breaking the fourth wall, sort of like Tim Curry straight away. He looks at, he's biting his lip and he's looking at the audience. And
How about that?
Exactly, yeah. He's looking straight at you. And so, yeah, and it makes you wonder how it could have never even been, how it wasn't written with the sense of complete audience participation. Now, the idea that there should be set lines for people to say, maybe not.
Yeah.
But, like, clearly it's not an opera where you have to be completely silent. And,
Like
if
the
you even
opposite.
coughed, somebody would probably cough back to sort of to tell you how...
I think even on a Broadway show or a West End show, you'd probably get those people that were there to be quiet and just watch and enjoy the show. Which is the beauty of Rocky Horror. It's anarchic.
Oh, it's so good. I felt great that I didn't have to worry about checking my social media.
Yeah.
What, you know, like I look, I'm not. The show is great, but you don't know how addicted, of course, like people are. But I'm fairly addicted.
And also, how often do you get a dance number where everyone is encouraged to stand up in the audience
That's true.
and join along with the time warp?
I don't know. Like I think there probably are lots. Probably shows that came out of the 70s actually in that sort of time, but not many that I've experienced.
Yeah. But no, it's very interesting how the audience participation came out of the film, of people just watching it over and over again, and obviously these midnight showings of Rocky Horror still continue today.
That's beautiful to me. The idea of midnight, you know,
It's
that's
brilliant,
right
isn't it? I'd love
into
to do
that
it.
B movie sort of
Yeah.
sci-fi. Oh, it's just wonderful. It's like it's that world of Stephen King and all that kind of outcasted America. You know, the product of this ridiculously homogenous kind of sheep-like 1950s.
And that's what obviously Rocky Horror is there to poke fun at, to mock, and it did very well. Well done, Richard O'Brien, genius. And you know that's kind of been his life now. Apart from the Crystal Maze, another amazing performance from Richard O'Brien.
Did you know
also,
he identifies like as 30% woman?
I think something like Rocky Horror could only come out of someone like Richard O'Brien.
And it is nice to. I've just seen the clip, and it actually almost not welled up, but I felt vindicated, or I felt some sort of.
The clip you're referring to is when,
Yes,
in
sorry.
the YouTube video, Richard O'Brien is one of the narrators, one of the guest narrators. There's also Stephen Fry, Mel Gilroy, Emma Bunton, Ade Edmondson.
You told me I got really excited about the idea of Stephen Fry.
Stephen
you
Fry, yeah.
told me that he might not have been your favourite.
No,
actually.
I think he was pretty good. I think because he may have known it was being filmed, he wanted it to run quite smoothly. So I don't think he picked up on as much or responded to as much audience participation as he could have. He did respond to some, but it was quite similar to how the rest of them reacted. It was kind of like, it's not what I've got here, and then he'd carry on.
Yeah, maybe you expect more of Stephen Fry unfairly. You know, people are bound to a degree by the circumstance, and we're talking about how free he is, but at the same time, you know, Stephen Fry sometimes builds up with his intelligence. You know, it's something that gains kind of potency over a discussion, whereas a quip is a quip, and you've got to be quick.
I think he was still. He'd still be
Oh,
very
he's
good.
quick. He's
given
not, you know.
if he was given the whole show to narrate, and
Yeah,
not just a small.
I'm sure
little
he'd
bit.
warm up.
Anthony Head, the man who plays
Head?
the Prime Minister. Yeah,
Fortunate.
exactly. Who plays the Prime Minister in Little Britain.
And
he-
Vampire Slayer's
And
mental.
yeah, he did it pretty well. He even did that to the audience.
Oh,
and,
okay. What was that? I can't think of an intelligent way to put that. The stimulation of the
well,
all I'm coming out is with I've just got the definite article.
imagine
that's all I
you're
got.
kind of setting up a shot in pool, but you're doing
Yeah.
it a lot faster.
That's one of my problems with Paul. Brilliant. I never gesticulate as Mr. Head.
Well, it was very good, and he reacted to one of the audience members. I couldn't actually make out what the audience member said, but I'm sure it was very funny. Back to what we were
we've
saying.
gone on a massive
Because
tangent.
we've mentioned other narrators and how they might have performed in the role of.
But that was a tangent from something else.
Yes, Richard O'Brien. He appeared on stage
Oh,
and
yes.
he had a
Yes.
huge round of applause. It lasted probably half a minute.
Yeah, that vindicates me because looking at the crowd that we saw in Leeds, to me it was a bunch of football fans in drag. It was amazing, and I'm not denigrating football. Yeah, I don't know very much about football
They
fans.
certainly weren't all
No, there was some strange, but
football fans.
it makes me uneasy how diverse almost it can be, because I'm like, damn, like this does not make it easy to come up with a theory as to how this is attracting different type of people. I guess just all people just like talking about cock, but to me, parts of it and parts of the people who would see him, okay, a little bit of it was like football fans in drag, a little bit.
Yeah,
And
there were
to
some
me,
burly men
for them to
drunk.
give a round of applause to somebody in a different context who they'd have shunned. And of course that happens all the time, where some odd people do make it into the public eye, but sometimes I feel as though that gets quite sort of squeezed out. And I think as much as we've got such a brilliant access now to so much diversity and human complexity, still so much of what is exposed on, you know, all our kind of Instagram feeds and Facebook is so it has to be so sanitized and polished, almost like going back to the 80s and all the adverts and TV. It's almost like we're just waiting for those weirdos to find their place to criticize. I'm saying weirdos, but like the different people. And it's just vindicating when you do see them getting sort of love from society, because originally these works of art were created because of a lack of love from society, I'd say. I thought that was quite touching to see him there, this strange semi-male, semi-female, and yet people appreciated. Now, what they appreciate about it, that's another question.
Yeah,
because if it's just yelling cock, then...
No, I think they were applauding so heavily because they knew that he had obviously starred in the film, and you know they were likely to know that he created the film.
I'm always too cynical.
And I think that giving them that round of applause and giving him that recognition that he's probably had all his life, being told how amazing the film.
Since then,
well, since it became a kind of cult classic and picked up steam, he deserved that. And although I reckon that he probably wouldn't want that applause, I don't think he'd want all that adulation.
It must be nice.
I'm sure it must be nice, but I think at the same time, I don't think Richard
O'Brien
O'Brien
like a little god for at least
well, I'm sure he did
2 days.
But I think at the same time, I think he felt that he just made a film or a stage show, and it happened to be successful. And,
I suppose so. That's the problem with creativity. Like, as much as I'm trying to give it a narrative that kind of gives it a political edge, that's for the critics to say afterwards, or the social commentators. Actual creators, generally, they're so involved in what they're doing and just enjoying in his case, it was probably just the fact that he needed to breathe. And so he needed to create to allow himself to breathe, because if he tried to be who he was in normal society, there's no way.
There would have been some rejection, definitely.
There's no way he could have been who he was. And it wouldn't have probably been outlandish rejection. It would have just been the fact that people did not comprehend. So how does he breathe? He goes to art.
Quite a lot of good art is often just ignored and not recognised.
Well, yeah, it's amazing how...
Well, Rocky Horror was, and that's why it was pushed to a midnight showing. And then from that, it's just became a huge phenomenon. We
do know that things of quality, though, last, whereas I don't know. Well, let's take, for example, Marcel Proust and his brother. Marcel Proust's brother, if you don't know Marcel Proust, he was probably the greatest novelist of the 20th century. Wrote a ridiculously long book. Anyway, his brother was a gorgeous doctor, a surgeon, I believe. Everybody loved his brother. Marcel Proust was a strange, sickly convalescent who spent all his time writing the book. But nobody in the whole of human history is ever going to remember whatever his name, Proust, even though he was gorgeous. Probably had a nicer life, and I'd probably prefer to sleep with him than Marcel. But, good old Marcel goes down for at least another probably 500-600 years. So quality lasts.
Good looks don't.
Well, okay. Anyway, I don't know if that actually proves my point at all.
I think
in a way, had that anecdote in my head for a while.
You talk about the potentially stranger of the two. Obviously, Marcel being the stranger of the two, and certainly being able to
homosexual.
Of the time, that would definitely be considered strange, and
but
also
what
illegal.
Caused it? Was it that caused the strangeness, or the strangeness that caused that, or neither? Who cares? I don't.
No. It does reflect that idea that how Richard O'Brien may have been considered strange, and from that strangeness and ridicule potentially from his peers has led to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and to that we thank him.
I certainly do. Thank you. So summing up thoughts, or had you got some whirlwind to cast down another state before we?
No, I think summing up is.
I hope that's a metaphor people use.
No. What's he on about?
Madness.
In future podcasts, we will have a lot more mockery of my brother. But for now, we agree on something, and I don't want to. My summing up thought would be that I don't want to say that he was awful, Liam Tamney, in the Leeds production. He wasn't. He just wasn't.
Although we kind of have said that.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't.
No, I know. We're going back. You're allowed to go back on what. Yeah.
We're not saying he's awful. We never said he was awful.
No, we didn't use those words.
He was just he just didn't really tick enough boxes to be Frankenfurter. He ticked the box.
He ticked other boxes, but boxes I didn't want ticking.
Physical comedy, very, very good. I'm not too fussed about that. It makes me laugh maybe once or twice. Once it's done over and over again, less so.
And to me, once again, is it fitting? Because I am bothered about the political and social kind of thrust. Most people, maybe not, but
it doesn't really seem to have a lot of depth.
Fit into that for me.
But he ticked the box of that, so well done.
So he wasn't awful.
Well done, Liam, for that one. You did physical comedy very well.
Yes.
You also did your singing exceptionally well. It just wasn't in the tone of Frankenfurter.
Yeah.
It was far more what you would imagine Disney to produce if they had the rights to Rocky Horror.
Yeah.
He did have some mannerisms of Frankenfurter.
Yeah, of course it couldn't be. It wouldn't be fully washed out. You're talking very extreme terms to make a point, but clearly every 1 in 5 times, he might have hit a roundabout area.
Yeah, it just wasn't enough for me, unfortunately. Other good positive aspects of the stage production was the stage itself and how it was designed. Very well done. They used the small space of the stage very, very well. For someone that looks at a production as a whole, I appreciate that.
I don't. You know me. I just look at one thing, and that's whether it supports an argument that I want to make.
Yes, or whether they have a good body. And so
an argument
Rocky
I want to
ticked
make.
the box there.
He certainly did.
Yeah. The actors were very good. The narrator did very well.
Yeah, this seems a bit unfair because we focus so much on Frankenfurter. I mean, that's to degree justified.
Yeah. Brad, the man who played Brad, did it very well, almost to a T. As with Janet, as with Rocky. This is kind of just saying, you're all good apart from you, Frankenfurter.
I still think a lot of the whole slipped up on the kind of my need for it to be thrusting towards the countercultural more, but...
It was still very clean, very polished.
Yeah, and yet vulgar at the same. For that reason, it was simple, vulgar or clean. Both those terms are simple. It didn't do the foreplay, so to speak, in between, to explore kind of the perversity in people, and that's what I wanted.
Yeah. The nuances of Rocky Horror weren't really addressed very well in the production. No. I think they were better in the YouTube video. Some of the nuances of Frankenfurter and the other characters were done a little bit better, but mainly Frankenfurter.
And I mean, Eddie's. I adore Meatloaf anyway. So once again, it's so hard.
I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, it was.
He was only in it for a very short time.
He's singing to me like I really was looking for those big howling kind of.
Okay. Yeah.
Heights in his voice, and he didn't.
There wasn't that, but.
Which would give it a manic. Well, he didn't. Yeah, but he didn't come across as manic as I'd have wanted.
No, fair enough. In short, but not in short, those were the good points, and that would be kind of my summary to take away was that it didn't tick all the boxes, but well worth going to see.
I felt a similar sort of thing, and because it was sort of in a little hall in Leeds, it kind of still matched my... Maybe because the audience did have a part, maybe because I was at home in Yorkshire, but once again, maybe I didn't feel as though I was exploring something that I love about the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is it gives me this blast of Americana. And when I'm hearing... Of course, I enjoyed the guy with the Coca-Cola, but it brought me straight back to the fact that I was still in Leeds. still at home in Yorkshire, which is not a bad thing. I love,
Big up.
but it's also the Americana that provides escapism in a way I don't think a lot of British society can. For as conformist American society is, because of that, they do conformity to the nth degree in certain places. Then the outcasts become, they do that to the nth degree. And so America's the land also of the outcasts, if also the conformists. England does things a bit more subtly and quietly, and it's sometimes it's therefore probably stuffier in a worse sense than full-on machine-like conformity, because you never get to the actual fact of the issue. So the fact that it was still in Leeds, and I didn't have, and it still therefore felt a little bit like I was going to a panto at times.
It did feel quite pantomime.
And that maybe can't be remedied because we're in England, and that's, in a little place in Yorkshire, that's kind of what we do. So
yeah, at least we did have Universal Studios. Another one that we went to see.
It's an
Universal
interesting
Studios.
Study of like the crossing of cultures, like
Halloween Horror Nights.
Yes, now that felt amazing. I think for the reason, and this is very personal to me because it was very fun, but because I'm so indebted in the thoughts and what it stands for, I think maybe I was looking for a ridiculous transformative experience that'd sweep me away with a bunch of fellow outcasts, or just people who kind of like don't quite fit, and
people that appreciate the strange.
Yeah. And I just, I didn't get that, but I think that that's not going to happen with something that's been so well worn as that. You can't go seeking it. It's got to be something that arises and comes as a new cultural phenomena.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't have been searching for that. So that's not a legitimate criticism, but it's kind of more a wish that I'd have just been around when the original...
The midnight movies.
Yeah.
That would have been fantastic, because they did stage performances alongside the film, so whilst the film was playing there would be people acting out and lip syncing with the actors themselves.
Wow.
So they did a huge performance, and it was definitely a trendsetter, and something that's never been done since.
Basically, I just want to go back through the rebellious periods of the last 50,
the
60
70s,
years.
yeah.
Well, yeah, just go back to the different rebellious periods of the last few decades, like the little surges of like the 60s and then the surges in the 70s. I don't know what happened in the 80s. God save us from that decade. Well, maybe punk, but I'm not
That's
so
for
fussed.
another discussion.
Yeah, I'm not so fussed about punk.
Because we have our disagreements on kind of the 80s and how bad it really was. And the 90s.
Ugh.
And the 90s.
Wow.
And we will approach that.
Yeah,
subject.
we could. Certainly.
So, that was Rocky Horror in Leeds.
That was Rocky Horror in Leeds, and in the cultural flow of Western civilization.
I just want to say thank you, Richard O'Brien, because I felt after the production I did need to go back and watch the original again.
And I want to say...
Mad genius.
Thank you, Tim Curry, for further informing my hip thrusts. Not that they needed that much informing.
No, thank you, Tim Curry, as well, for bringing Frankenfurter into our lives.
Yes, thank you.
Something we would have been more boring without it.
Fred so.
Fred so Brad.
Fred so Stu.
Fred so Sam.
So, is what's for tea? Sausage?
I don't bloody know, but apparently it's going cold.
Frankenfurter. No.
No, but it's sausage.
So, goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.